Morning YouTube, Tired Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. In this one, we are going over the July 4th forecast. Before I get into that, yesterday was pretty crazy. Unfortunately, I was not able to live stream. I didn't get off of work until like almost 6:30, and then didn't get home until almost 8 o'clock. Didn't even get to eat until 9 o'clock. So, yeah, it's a lot of ripping and running, and a lot of mess that shouldn't have happened that did end up happening. Well, I'm not really going to get into the details here, but it was a pretty rough day, and I think I did a good job handling it, all things considered. But yeah, anyone that was looking for me to be live yesterday, sorry, I wanted to be. I was well aware of the enhanced risk and everything, and I was pushing really hard to get home, but everything just kind of fell apart. Unfortunately, and it wasn't even of my own doing. That's the worst part. Anyway, as far as today's enhanced risk, small corridor over here. It's a wind-generated enhanced risk, or wind-driven enhanced risk. We do see an area of hatched risk here, 70-mile-per-hour plus winds being possible, maybe even up to hurricane force. And then also we have the threat for large hail and brief tornadoes, especially over towards Cheyenne and Denver. But Minneapolis especially, we're watching for you a little bit earlier in the day. La Crosse, Sioux Falls. In fact, there was a tornado over here just west of there yesterday. Then Omaha, Lincoln, Norfolk, we're watching you too. McCook, Colby, Garden City, and of course Denver, Pueblo, and Cheyenne. Also, can't discount this marginal risk here, which includes just the east of Philadelphia, stretching all the way towards Dallas, also including areas in between like Atlanta, Charleston, Raleigh, Wilmington, Columbus, Birmingham, Montgomery, and numerous other towns. Alright, so now we're taking a look at the upper levels of the atmosphere here. And the reason I'm a little bit more concerned about a tornado threat over here would be because of a look on this trough here. You see that there's a small maximum that tries to develop here on the left side of the trough. Usually that's more conducive to a tornadic setup, whereas a wind setup you would look more so towards the right end of the trough. There's also positive and negative tilts. There's going to be a new video that I make that kind of revises the one that I did on my Weather Nerd 101 playlist. Maybe one day we'll see that. We'll see a new video pop up on that whenever things start to slow down here. But in the meantime, here is the setup that I'm concerned with this right here. It's going to be on the eastern flank of that, where I would look for severe and tornadic soundings here. Very dry as far as dew points are concerned here, though. So a little bit of skepticism there, but nonetheless, though, damaging wind potential is pretty high with this one. Instability is also another question that I have, but nonetheless, there is pretty well existing severe weather potential there. And then here is a TOR sounding to go with that. Also potential for some pretty large hail here, so we could see a hatched risk over towards this region here. Some of these analogs even have up to 4-inch hail potential. Decent lapse rates, they're into the 7s. There's nothing to write home to mom about necessarily, so to speak, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Instability here is a little bit more suitable. Downward cape is a little more towards the marginal side of things. But nonetheless, need to be keeping an extra close eye on this area, as we are very much conducive for tornadoes, especially looking at the directional shear on this QT chart. Over towards this region here, we're going to be mainly dealing with more marginal severe. Instability is a little bit more questionable here, and D-cape is a little bit on the weaker side. Kinematically, this is not quite as impressive as what we're seeing out west. No real surprises there. But usually whenever you see these little maximums begin to develop on the right side of the trough, maybe, and usually most times we lean towards damaging winds. Oops. Anyway, though. if we look towards the earlier part of the day, maybe we could see a little bit of a greater chance for a tornado. Even then, it's still not a super impressive sounding. Again, instability is a big question, and lapse rates are not very impressive, not very steep, I should say. But that being said here, let's get moving to another level of the atmosphere. It'll give us a better look at things. So here's us looking at 500 millibars. This is a little bit more towards the middle of the atmosphere, and it's pretty similar across the board. A little bit more widespread wind energy up in this level, so no surprises. I think right around 00 to 01Z, which would be about maybe 7-8 o'clock my time, is where we could start to see a increasing potential for severe here. Maybe even a little bit earlier. Kind of hard to read it from this map necessarily. There we go. So about 2,000 joules per kilogram worth of CAPE and a DCAPE of 1089. Also some pretty good hail analogs here. Tornado threat is pretty minimal though. Lapse rates are kind of getting up there, so we could have increased potential for hail, even up to golf ball size here. But kinematically, as far as the low levels are concerned, which is key to tornado genesis, we're not super impressive here. Moisture return isn't incredible either. We are getting into the 60s, but nothing beyond that. Maybe I'm kind of comparing to what I've been seeing over here towards the eastern half of the country, where we've been seeing those 70-degree dew points. But 60 is more than suitable enough for severe weather. Anyway, voice is a little shot. As we continue to go forward here, this moves on and we begin to look at a new setup for severe as we head into tomorrow. We look at the shortwave here. It's a pretty similar deal. Really, things wouldn't start to ramp up until right about the time where we would see fireworks begin to go off across these regions with severe weather here. And then by later into the evening, these storms will probably start to drop off below severe limits. This is also looking into the low-level jet, which is key to tornadic activity. And we do see a little pocket develop right here towards Denver that's pretty interesting. Marginal severe, we're also looking into a storm just a little bit because of the low levels here, or a new storm starting to form. As we get later into the time frame here, here's where the damaging wind threat really starts ramping up here. Okay, that's actually an odd sounding here. Might have clicked a bad area. I'm still a little tired, if I'm being honest, so might be a little off here. If I am, I apologize. But nonetheless, here, as we get later into the evening, severe weather threat does drop off. We're also on the fringe of these mountains here, so it could be a little harder to read this too. Yeah, we're starting to get more and more heavy thunderstorm coverage here by 01, so figures. But anyway, if we look at parameters here, we're going to go ahead and look at CAPE and maybe look at the lapse rates too. I'm going to mainly hyper focus on the enhanced risk for this part of the video here. We will look at the rest of the country and get an idea of what to expect as far as storms are concerned. But this being a more urgent weather area here, of course, I'm going to try to make sure I go over this a little bit more thoroughly. Like I said, CAPE does seem like CAPE or instability here does seem like it's a little bit of a question here. There are small little streaks here where we're still sitting at about 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilo. But overall, nothing really crazy here as far as TOR soundings or anything of that sort. Downward CAPE seems to be really impressive, and that's going to be the main threat, of course, is damaging winds. That's what downward CAPE usually is a good usually is what that translates into, is downdraft potential. This is some of the better lapse rates that I've seen here. Some 7s and some 8s here towards the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. Again, like I said, At the low levels, kinematically, we're not super impressive. The timing with this isn't great right now. But of course, as we go later throughout the day, we could see this uptrend or downtrend here. So just because I'm making this forecast now does not mean this is final. So here we are getting into the early morning hours of tomorrow. Instability is just about dropped off completely. So later we get into the evening, the less intense the storms will be at that point. Still get showers and thunderstorms late into the evening, but should be below severe limits at that point. So as we look at the lapse rates here, out west is where I think the most impressive lapse rates will be. Just off the fringes of those mountains is where I think we could get some of the largest hail here. But we're mainly still sitting around 6s and 7s at this point, even as storms are starting to develop here. Could see an increase in hail potential over here towards Kansas as we get late into the evening. So we do have to keep a close eye on that. In fact, I do see a lapse rate of 9 here, which is really impressive. If we can take any advantage of the atmosphere, if there is enough energy in there, we could see some pretty large hail. But overall, as far as the setup is concerned, let's go ahead and take a look at reflectivity at long last. Storms will fire probably about as early as maybe 2 or 3 o'clock Central Time. Then kind of hang around for a while. This is probably where we'll see some of the strongest storms right here. We look for these little streaks here that represent updraft felicities, and usually the more brighter the brighter the return here, the stronger the helicity with that is, or the longer the streak, I should say. Actually, there aren't too many of those. Like I said, it's going to be a very narrow corridor where we see that, but nonetheless, though, damaging wind potential, especially towards, I would say, more so south central Nebraska looks more promising as far as that's concerned. As we get later into the evening, there still could be a couple of pole severe storms, but everything should stay mostly below severe limits here. So that being said, let's go ahead and look at the country as a whole today. So here's our low pressure that's going to be responsible for our storms today. Here's our high pressure that's going to be causing that clockwise flow and allowing for new storms to develop here. Okay, I don't know why I'm not able to get my marker to work. Sorry about that. I had to do a little bit of tech work here because my computer was acting up. But here's that high pressure that I was talking about here. Here's that clockwise flow, and this is what's going to be dipping back into the Gulf here. We're probably looking at a much wider area than what I'm showing. This is just more or less a rough example. But basically, with that clockwise flow, we're going to see this moisture just end up being resurged out here towards the southeast and the mid-Atlantic, and this is what's going to give rise to our thunderstorms, especially as we go later into the day here. So we go ahead and do this really quickly. Watch what happens. It'll actually leave that up, and then watch what happens as we get towards 18Z and beyond. Boom. All these little scattered showers and thunderstorms start popping up here. Some of these have a chance of going severe. There is a marginal risk in this area that stretches all the way from just south of Philly here, all the way towards Dallas. So we could see a few severe storms here as well. Wouldn't be surprised to see a couple severe thunderstorm warnings. So we do have to watch out for that over there. Of course, as we mentioned before, we have our severe weather set up here. That's going to exist more so later into the evening and really more so into the overnight. Coverage isn't going to be widespread though, from the looks of it here. Then for anywhere else, you could see a couple other pockets of rain here. For the most part, things look like they're going to be okay. Look at temperatures. Nothing new here. We know that it's going to be hot for a lot of us. For a lot of us are getting 80s, 90s. Some of us in the triple digits, especially towards the southwest. Also towards Texas-Oklahoma line, you could see some triple digits there as well. Of course, as we get towards the time where fireworks would start to go off, we're still going to be baking for a lot of us, unless we're over towards Wyoming and parts of the far northern reaches of the U.S. here. And unless you're far up north, it's still going to be pretty hot even as we get into the overnight hours here. So might want some water beside the bed. And then also some good news in the meantime. Smoke density will not be a big factor today. There are a few new wildfires that have started to develop here, unfortunately though, towards the Baja, which could come into play across parts of the southwest here. But as far as the Canadian fires, right now the wind flow has them pushing away from the U.S. Anyone further up north though, however, we could have some problems there. Wind flow will be changing soon, however, so towards the Great Lakes and then maybe even the Northeast, we could start to see issues with smoke as we head towards the end of the week, but that's going to be for another video because I can only look so far out with this model here. As far as tropical concerns, there aren't any. No new tropical cyclones expected out here towards the Atlantic within the next 7 days. Towards the Pacific here, nothing to worry about as far as the U.S. is concerned. There's really no threat to land, even with this setup here, with this storm having a 60% chance of forming within the next 7 days. So nothing to be concerned with. And then of course over towards Hawaii, it's quiet. But that's all I got for you guys on this video. I know this was a little bit longer than what I would normally do for a holiday forecast, but wanted to make sure I touched base on everything. Didn't want to leave anyone out today. But that being said, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. Smash that like button, decimate that subscribe button, and also make sure you get that bell on to be notified of every video. I've been posting pretty much every day here, sometimes even twice a day. And also doing live stream coverage of severe weather events when I can. But that being said here, also share the video just in case someone wants to know what their 4th of July could look like. And then of course, if you have any questions in the comments, feel free to fire away. That being said, this has been Tire Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, take care and have a nice 4th.